Stupid monkey philosophy. Back again, because we just couldn't get enough of this debunk on Mark Passio's de facto Satanism. About 8 minutes and 55 seconds into this video, we spent 30 minutes, minus his portion of the video, pretty much refuting a lot of the things this guy has to say. If you weren't here last time, just give a little refresher. Mark here is claims to be an ex-Satanist priest, although the Church of Satan denies having any knowledge of Mark. And Mark's knowledge of the Church of Satan seems to be pretty sparse, from what we can tell. So that's one thing. But Mark has this theory really resonates with me because it screams like a lot of the Illuminati lore that I heard back in the day. And it's like the Illuminati, the government, the corporations, they're all Satan, that sort of spiel. Mark's a bit more eloquent about it, but anyway. So we'll pick up where we left off. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the last one because we're just going to pick right up where we left off, 8 minutes and 55 seconds, if you're checking the timestamp. And again, this is a restream from JG's stream. If you haven't checked that out, I recommend you do.
So why call it Satanism? So there's two overarching reasons that they take that symbolism, imagery, and that wording. The symbolism and trappings of the Christian devil or Satan are often used in modern Satanism for two reasons. The first is to try to make outsiders see this religion, Satanism, as just another quaint religious belief.
I pressed the wrong button. I feel it's important to clarify for anyone so you don't have to go back. So Mark is claiming that the Satanists don't actually worship Satan. Right? So we've got to have that part clear. Satanists don't worship Satan. They worship humans. So the Satanists are actually humanists. Humanists are really Satanists? All right, we continue.
That is based upon traditional Christian belief systems. And therefore, people will dismiss it as something that doesn't have that much active power in the world. The second reason they associate it with the Christian tradition of the evil deity Satan is they want to associate themselves with what they refer to as the adversarial dynamic in nature, or as it is called in the occult world, the force of involution.
I actually had to look this word up, involution. I will actually check the definition. It'll take me just a second. He's reusing this term again. Hail sodomy. Thanks for following on Twitter. Followed back. I didn't make that shit up. That's their handle. Should be an interesting one. Involution is, where the heck did I put it? There it is. In physiology, the shrinkage of an organ in old age or when inactive. In mathematics, a function, transformation, or operator that is equal to its inverse, which gives the identity when applied to itself. What the hell are you talking about, man?
So involution is the force which opposes true evolution in consciousness. That keep
No, it doesn't. No, it's not. I just read it. Involution is the shrinkage of an organ, where the function, transformation, or operator equal to the inverse in a math problem. If you mean devolution, which I was just looking at earlier, that would be the uh, opposite of evolution. That would be the reverse of evolution.
Keeps consciousness held back, keeps it at bay, keeps it folded up and not unfurling and expanding. Involution is the opposite of true evolution.
No, it's not. It actually has nothing to do with evolution.
In the mind. This comes from the ancient Hebrew word shaitan. The word Satan itself comes from the Hebrew word shaitan, meaning adversary or opposer. And what was it the adversary of? It was the adversary of true evolution and consciousness. It opposed that. It is trying.
No, it was the adversary of their god, their deity. It had nothing to do with evolution. They didn't think about evolution. They didn't have a concept of evolution.
To keep that held back, tied back, enslaved. Satanism, as an ideology, as an ideological way of being in the world, is ultimately about being opposed to the true order of natural law, the universal laws of morality, which govern the behavioral consequences of beings who are gifted with the capacity for holistic intelligence and free will. Satanists ultimately stand against that true order, that true moral dynamic of natural law that is inherent to creation. Again, they want to be God. They want to destroy the natural order. They want to institute their own order, alleged order, which is actually chaos, an inversion of true order, of course. So that's a basic review of what Satanism is from my explanation of it given in Demystifying the Occult Part 2, Satanism and the Dark Occult. Now we're going to get...
Okay, so that's interesting. So you don't qualify any of those statements here. I'm not going to go through a whole other presentation or whatever, whether it's one of your books or I don't know. Mark writes books, but there's a lot of these long-form videos. And yeah.
To get into what de facto Satanism actually is, which is the whole purpose of this presentation. The first thing that we have to understand is what does de facto, what does the term de facto actually mean? The term de facto means in deed, in action. It is derived from the Latin preposition de.
Well, roughly, Oxford Languages says in fact or in effect, whether by right or not, or denoting someone or something that is such in fact. Right? So I don't know where you're getting indeed from. I'm not seeing that necessarily here. Merriam-Webster, in reality or actually. Yeah. Which, I mean, indeed, well, you're saying indeed as two separate words, which wouldn't be, this would be indeed, like the singular, the single word, those two things put together. Indeed, yes, in fact.
DE, meaning of, from, about, concerning, or regarding. And then the second...
Yeah, I didn't get any of those. I didn't get any of those from Oxford or Merriam-Webster.
Part of the etymological breakdown of de facto comes from the Latin noun factum. Facto comes from the Latin noun factum, meaning deed, act, or achievement. De facto is often used to describe someone who represents or embodies something in action, in their deeds, without that person necessarily formally claiming.
So factum actually means done, but it can also mean fact, deed, or act. In civil law, we use it to say anything stated and made certain, or the due execution of will, including everything necessary to its validity. Where is Mark getting his translations from? Why are they so different from all the translations I'm getting?
To be that thing in words. So again, de facto means that someone embodies a way of being in the world in their behavior through their actions, but they don't necessarily claim to be that thing in words. So if someone acts in a quote Christ-like way, they could be called Christian in their deeds. They might be considered a de facto Christian. Even if you ask them, do you subscribe to formal Christianity or organized Christianity?
Well, yeah, but to be a Christian means to be like Christ. That's what it means.
They may say, no, I do not. I'm not a member of that religion. I don't consider myself a member of that religion. But if they truly acted in a way that was described as Christ-like because it was similar to the way Christ taught people to behave in the New Testament teachings, in the New Testament scriptures, that person could be called a de facto Christian. So you could be called a de facto anything after the word de facto if you behave as that being or thing is described to be in words.
This gave me a good laugh. A de facto anything. Well, yes. I mean, technically, you're sort of right, But you're just kind of glossing over the fact that Satanists, in your worldview, don't actually worship Satan, which is ridiculous, right? That doesn't even make sense. Now, the other thing is he's taking a usage of de facto out of context, like where we say this person becomes the de facto guardian of another person for some reason. Say the parents die and the adult sibling takes de facto guardianship of their minor sibling, right? Should be something that might happen in the United States in the family court system or something, right? It just means that they are taking a guardianship over that person in lieu of the other. And that's kind of the way I think he's using de facto here. They're appropriating Satanism, but who he's talking about is humanists. And he was trying very hard, I think, to take a more secular approach in the beginning, and now he's leaning into Christianity. So once again, I think the grift is on,
because your deeds are truly expressing what that thing is. So in this image, it says, yes, just as you.
No, deeds or actions are certainly meaningful, but they can be expressive. But when you're talking about the expression in linguistic terms, right, we have words to express what the thing is. Now, whether or not the person behaves in accordance to what they claim to be, right, separate issue.
You can identify a tree by its fruits. You can identify people by their actions. It's not about what they say. It's not about what they say they are. It's not about what they claim to identify as. It is about what their actions show you in the very real world that they are and who they are. Again, as is said in New Testament scripture, by their fruits ye shall know them. It's about what you do in the world that is ultimately going to tell other people who and what you are, not what you say you are in words.
Well, I agree, but you're also just talking about perception. Like you maybe do good things that people don't know about, and maybe they only see the shitty things you do, right? Like that's just a matter of perception, and like you're just being really, you're just making these broad generalizations about human behavior, right? Like if you go around just labeling people based off of your observation of them without having a deeper understanding of the person, you're committing an error.
So this is a very important thing to keep in mind and to distinguish what people say they are versus the real thing. Their actions are going to define who they truly are.
No, people can change their actions. Like that's what like reformation is, right? Like you start out the sinner and then you become reborn or whatever. That's the whole point of your Christian thing is you could turn the sinner into the saint. If it's coming through in the background, I'm letting DJ Oz play in the background while we talk here. I know I got the fan going, and hopefully it drowns out the background noise and get a little music in there for you.
So the question comes up, can a person be a Satanist and not even know it? Can you be a Satanist and not realize that you are a Satanist?
And no, the answer is no, Mark. In order to be a Satanist, one has to worship Satan. That is what Satanism is. If you think somebody could be doing something that you find to be satanic and not know it, okay. But that's not being a Satanist, right? It doesn't make you a de facto member of a group, a very particular group.
And the answer is absolutely. It is absolutely true that a person can be a Satanist and not know it. They would not have to claim to be a Satanist to actually subscribe to the worldview, to the tenets, to the belief systems, and to the behaviors of what a Satanism is in the very real world. So again, this picture describes it. Someone could deny all they want to themselves, who they are inside. Depicted as the person on the left, not wanting to confront themselves, not wanting to look at themselves, being in a state of shame over who they really are deep inside. And the image on the right depicts someone who is wearing a mask.
Now you're just trying to psychologize everyone. Like, what speciality do you have in psychology? The picture on the right depicts it's surrealistic art, sir. There's a faceless person, like a mannequin here, and a series of masks hanging next to them. And the picture on the left could just be somebody having like an emotional breakdown, or I don't know, maybe they just got hit in the face with a dodgeball or something. I don't know, but why are you just making these like, what are you talking about right now? People being in denial about their Satanism? No, there is no de facto Satanism.
They could change every day to a different mask, to a different face. They could call themselves a million different things, but it's their deeds, it's their actions that ultimately define who they are. So
no, I mean, again, it defines their effect on the world around them. It defines how other people see them. It may define how they end up spending their lives, right? If they act in a certain way that is so not in accordance with society that they wind themselves up in a prison or an institution, right? They can no longer interact with society. That would be a result of their actions, right? But who they are, identity, right? Separate thing. You're talking about, right? And what they identify as, right? You've had Christians commit murder because they heard the voice of God, and then they went on trial, and now they're in prison. Mark, are they de facto Satanists, or are they just Christians who went crazy?
You could have a mask for saying that you're a Christian. This being can say, I'm a Christian. This being can say, I'm a Jew. I practice Judaism.
I'm going to skip a little bit of this because this is just ridiculous, honestly.
I'm a Muslim. I practice Islam, or a Buddhist, etc., so forth and so on. They can claim to be millions of different things through their mouth, through their words. Okay, but the words does not define who the being actually is. What defines who and what the being actually is how they behave in the world, what they do, their deeds.
No, what defines what the being is like who their parents were, who named them, what society they grew up in. Like, the person is the object of your actions later on define who the person is remembered as, how they affect the world. Like I said, that's not who they are, is just an identity, right? You're just talking about a million different things and trying to act like it's all one.
Define them. So this is what a de facto Satanist
They
is.
don't
It's a
define them.
Satanist in their deeds,
No.
in their actions.
Mm-mm.
They are defining themselves as a Satanist. And it's a little bit more than that even. It's your mindset, because your mindset is ultimately going to determine how you behave. See, mentalism precedes everything. How you think is how you're going to behave in the world. What your belief system is, what your worldview is ultimately going to drive your behavior.
Okay, you're really not.
So the Satanist indeed has to first accept the satanic mindset in their mind. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. That's what ultimately defines. Those are the defining characteristics and hallmarks of what a Satanist truly is, whether they claim to be one or not. Someone can claim to be a Christian, and in their mindset and their deeds, they're a Satanist. They can claim to be a Jew, and in their minds and in their deeds, they're a Satanist. They can claim to be any number of religions or any number of philosophies, but it is their overarching mindset, their worldview, that then informs and drives their deeds that is ultimately going to define who they are in this world through their behavior.
Okay, that's a bunch of gobbledygook, Mark. Like, sure, people's actions are, okay, they may be misaligned with their actual beliefs. That doesn't make them Satanists. Like, you keep throwing this out there like you just, no, Satanism is a very particular thing. Judaism is a very particular thing. Christianity is a very particular thing. Somebody who claims to be that thing and claims to believe that thing, maybe even, knows the tenets of that thing, may act in a way that is not in accordance with that belief system. And then you have a whole different thing that's not Satanism.
Above all else, Satanism is a mindset, and this is what has to be completely understood.
Satanism is a religion. It's a belief structure.
One of the most critical principles of natural law is that all things begin as thoughts. Again, that is the principle of mentalism in natural law. This principle eventually extends to the macrocosmic law. As humans think in the aggregate, so shall be the quality of their collective experience on Earth. Your mindset ultimately determines behavior, and your behavior ultimately determines the quality of your experience. That is how...
One of the most critical principles of natural law is that all things begin as thoughts. This principle eventually extends to the macrocosmic law. As humans think in the aggregate, so shall be the quality of their collective experience on Earth. Mentalism, the all is mind, the universe is mental. The Kybalion? What the fuck is that, dude? What are you talking about? Okay, mentalism. If the slave masters can give a lower level, far less informed variant of their own mindset to those they wish to rule over, it becomes that much easier for them to control their would-be slaves. Dude, this is some wacky shit, bro. This is straight crazy. You're going to like the David Icke level, or Icky or Ike or whatever, however you pronounce his name. Is this like that? Because this is crazy. So they just want to make people dumb so they can enslave them. Okay. It's a long-winded way to say that.
How natural law functions to bring us the consequence not only of what we believe, but how we behave in the world. And then we have made that bed, and then we must sleep in it. If the slave masters of our world can give a lower level, far less informed variant of their own mindset, their own religion, to those they wish to rule over, it becomes that much easier for them, the Satanists, to control their would-be slaves, people who they give a lower level variant of their very own mindset and religion to, that those people, their slaves, don't even understand is the lower level mindset of their ruling class masters. Again, the principle of mentalism dictates that the all is mind, and that the universe is ultimately a mental construct derived by and directed by mind. These are...
Wait, but who's teaching that? Are Satanists teaching that, or are you teaching? Who's talking about mentalism? Like, you just like rolled that in there. Like, I don't believe that. So why would it matter? Like, that's clearly not true. Your experience is almost entirely mental, other than the physical part of it, which is like huge, right? But you can control your mental experience. And like, this is like projecting thoughts into the universe, manifesting. Yeah. Crystal
teachings
healing.
that are taught in the Hermetic traditions and many other traditions that teach natural law. But here is the variant that I've explained to people that I hope communicates through pop culture. The idea that
Dr.
we are
Evil?
thinking like our own enslavers. Their greatest trick that they pulled was not even convincing us that Satan doesn't exist. It's it's giving us the lower level variant of the satanic mind, what I call mini me Satanism. They have to give you a lower level variant of their mindset in order to rule you. If you get out and come out of the satanic mindset, truly exit it, truly emerge from it.
Was there? So I'm just already reading ahead in here because I can't make heads or tails out of what he's actually saying right now. One of the most critical principles of natural law is that all things begin as thoughts, and he keeps going back to this point. I don't even remember that from his video on natural law. But we can't. How do we determine that all things begin as thoughts? All things don't begin as thoughts. You think about things. Thoughts don't. The thoughts can become things, but you have to put a physical entity there to make that happen, right? Like, so what are you talking about?
You cannot be controlled by the higher level dark occultists in the world. Ultimately, you can't be controlled. Physically, yes, they can manipulate other people to do their dirty work for them, but you yourself would be at least free, mentally and spiritually. Okay, so again, I call de facto Satanism, the name that I've coined and given to it is mini me Satanism from the Austin Powers series of Dr. Evil being the nemesis of the protagonist in the series of movies, comic movies.
That is so dumb.
And, the Dr. Evil character representing the embodiment of the narcissistic villain has a
mini me,
a small version of himself that he calls mini me, and that is what they're essentially doing in an allegorical way.
Are we sure this guy's not doing satire? I just have to. I can't tell the difference anymore.
As an analogy, they are giving you a small version of who they are mentally, in the mindset, in the belief system, and that enables them to control people because they are in a controllable programmed state in the mind. So mini me Satanism could be another term, or it's my term really, for what de facto Satanism actually is as a mindset.
No, they're both very, very bad.
The question becomes, what in fact is the satanic mindset? We've described that Satanism is an occult religion. It's ancient. The rulers of our world, the people who are truly enthroned behind the scenes, the ostensible corridors of power, who are truly enthroned behind all worldly institutions, are dark occultists or ancient psychologists who are manipulating the people of this world into compliance and submission to their will.
Ancient psychology, thwarting modern psychology since the beginning of time. Dude, Satanism couldn't even have existed. What are you, like, if they're ancient, how ancient, right? Because Satanism has only existed as long as the fucking Bible has existed. I don't even think Satan's in the Satan is in the Old Testament, I suppose, but they don't really he's not he's just kind of like some jerk off that God lets go mess with people, right? Like, it's not really that big of a figure until the later parts, I think. I don't know.
But what is their mindset? What is the defining hallmarks and characteristics of their belief system that they then give to us at a lower level that enables people to be able to be controlled? And again, this is going to be some review from Demystifying the Occult Part 2, but it's necessary as a setup to help people to understand de facto Satanism. There are four main tenets of the satanic mindset or religion. The first is selfishness or egotism. Again, I would claim that you could call Satanism egotism.
No. Egotism is egotism. Like, how do you draw this conclusion that anybody who worships themselves is worshiping Satan, so they must be Satan, right? They can't be Satan, so they're not really Satanists, but they're humanistic in the sense that they care about themselves. Selfishness, like, okay, I don't think selfishness is necessarily the greatest quality to have, but it's not necessarily the worst either. I mean, there are much worse qualities. Of course, yeah, biblically, Satan is depicted as a very selfish, indulgent creature, right? But in that context, again, a Satanist is one who worships Satan. And Satan, like Yahweh, being also very selfish, because Yahweh is in fact very selfish, wants the people to worship him, not themselves. That's not how the story works. It's not what happens.
Or the religion of the self, and it would be highly accurate. But I think, referring to it as Satanism really connects it with the concept of the adversary, the adversarial dynamic in nature, involution, the force which is holding human consciousness back, which is highly accurate.
Involution is, you're using that word incorrectly. I'm just going to keep correcting you.
So the first tenet of Satanism is the dictum that self-preservation is the highest law. And it's not just self-preservation, it's self-advancement, and it's really the apotheosis of self, of ego. It's
so like literally anyone who wants to advance themselves from whatever station they're in to a better one is now an egotist and a Satanist?
Ego as God, as we're going to talk about. But put in other words, the first satanic dictum of self-preservation is the highest law really means this. The survival and comfort of the physical self is always a more important goal than doing what is morally right. Live for yourself only and care only about you and yours. Okay? That's the ultimate driving directive of Satanism, of the satanic mentality, pure egotism.
No, sir, that's the driving direction of one aspect of evolution, right? Caring for yourself and your tribe, right? This is how we have small tribes grew into larger tribes. And then those tribes outlive their usefulness, right? And now we can actually behave as a collective, as a hive, right? Which is something that humans weren't capable of doing before. And now we are. Right? So that leftover mentality from the process of evolution that got us here was that we needed to protect the tribe, insulate the tribe. The fact of self-care and self-progress being still a positive thing, right? Each individual must progress in order to further the hive, right? But now we are a hive. We're a collected unit. We can communicate with each other from anywhere all over the world, right? So your theory is not adding up.
If you even must step on others to get what you want, then so be it, for this is a dog-eat-dog world. And how many people think exactly like that and live exactly like that? See, this...
Sure, yeah, there's still shitty people out there. It doesn't prove they're Satanists either.
This is the key that I'm trying to connect in people's minds. If Satanism is about pure egotism and selfishness, how many...
That's not what Satanism is about. I don't accept your brand of Satanism. You're just making shit up out of whole cloth. You are weaving the web, sir, Mr. Spider.
People do you see embodying that ideology? How many people do you see living like that in the world and making that their mindset and their ideology? It's most people. It's not a question of how many people are in the satanic mindset. It's a question of how many are not. It's a tiny handful that are not in this mindset. They have inculcated most of the world into a lower level variant of the satanic religion. The tenet that clearly defines the overarching worldview of Satanism is perpetual me thinking. So I ask the question, do not agree that the vast majority of individuals in our society, in our world, is that it's virtually everyone. It's a matter of who have they not. This is our entire culture. This is our entire worldview as human beings, as human society. And that's what has to ultimately change.
Are you a Marxist?
Satanism is moral relativism. Again.
I'm sorry, I muted myself instead of Mark. Just took a fat hit. Are you a Marxist? It sounds like you're espousing some brand of communism here, Mark. Which is fine. I mean, I'm not necessarily against that. We could talk about that, but if capitalism is your issue, it sounds like capitalism is really your issue, not Satanism. You think capitalism is Satanism? Because I might kind of agree with you in jest. I would say, yeah, the capitalists, they are really satanic, but not seriously, because I don't believe in Satan, right? I don't believe that Satan actually exists. So I think that Satanism is the worship of a fictional deity, right? Just like the worship of Yahweh, right? I guess maybe I would have had to get to that point with you first. But now you're just basically saying that greed is bad. Okay, we agree. Greed is bad. It's not necessarily Satanism, Mark. Words mean things.
When we break down what it is, you'll see most people subscribe to this worldview. Moral relativism is the ideology that there is no objective difference between right behavior and wrong behavior. There's no real objective moral standard of behavior.
I tend to agree with that. I am a compatibilist, but that's the wrong one. just got a little bit stoned. Moral realist? Is that the word I'm looking for? Moral. I think that in these respects, they should be taken. Right, moral realist. Yes, I think I'm a moral realist at this point. God, that's a topic for a whole nother day. Now I gotta make sure I'm labeling myself right. But yeah, but there is no right. It's subjective to humans, but we can find a common place between ourselves by proper forms of communication. Like we can establish rules and laws like we have, right? And so the relativistic sense is a philosophical one, right? We say in the philosophically objective sense, you can't detect morality, right? Facts don't care about feelings. These are two different realms of thought and experience.
It's purely arbitrary. So human beings may arbitrarily create or decide for themselves what right and wrong are, based upon their own whims and their own preferences.
That's all we do.
It's just a subjective construct of the mind that
Yeah.
we can say this is right, this is wrong, if that's what's comfortable for us, if that's
correct.
what feels right for us.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, it felt right for, much older men to marry very young girls, and there was no problem with that. And now we have laws against it, and we as a species have learned and evolved out of that in most cultures, right? There are practices that we do for very long periods of time. War. We're still, not evolved out of war, right? That has nothing to do with Satanism. In fact, many wars have been waged in the name of God, right? So, again.
In other words, that which we consider right for ourselves is what is right, and that which we consider wrong for ourselves is what is wrong. Since, according to the inherent and objective laws of morality, the aggregate amount of morality present in the lives of the people of any given society is directly proportional to the amount of freedom in that society. That is how natural law functions. Aggregate freedom determines aggregate morality. Then true freedom can never exist in a society that embraces moral relativism, because that society will almost always behave in an immoral capacity, or allow behavior in an immoral capacity to go on unrestrained and unchecked and unchallenged.
I don't think I've never heard a moral relativist actually say that should be the way societies are run, right? Again, they're speaking in purely philosophical terms, just to say that you don't have, once again, the argument for objectivity in a strictly philosophical sense. But those people would still say that there need to be laws in place that prevent one human being from harming another human being, and that the subjective reason should be enough, right? Because we know that harm is being caused. We need to prevent the experience of that person, the subjective experience of that individual, from being altered in such a way.
So I ask people to ask themselves honestly the question, and honestly answer, more importantly, honestly answer the question. Do you agree or disagree that the vast majority of human beings in our society subscribe to the ideology of moral relativism?
No, I don't even think the vast majority of human beings would have the philosophical understanding to speak on moral relativism. Like, most people don't think about these things. Most people are just busy going about their day-to-day lives, trying to survive. Somebody once said that philosophy was, very much a luxury. Like, if you're a philosopher, you probably ought be out doing something more productive or something like that. I don't remember the whole thing. I probably just amalgamated 5 different quotes into fucking nonsense.
As a matter of fact, again, I tell people the anecdote all the time. I've done many, many social experiments, literally going to street corners in different geographic areas and just asking people. We have a quick poll that we're conducting. Do you think right and wrong are inherent in the natural world, inherent to nature? Or are they subjective human constructs of mind that we get to invent and decide upon? And we've gotten upwards of 70% of people. In some areas, 75%, 3 out of 4 human beings. In what I might call slightly better moral areas of the human population,
What
in certain
slightly
geographical
better
regions,
moral
what? The lowest percentage.
Okay, wait. Slightly more moral geographical regions, and what was these upwards of 70%? I've seen his street interviews. They're based as fuck. Okay, let's go like 30 seconds back or something.
In different geographic areas, and just asking people, we have a quick poll that we're conducting. Do you think right and wrong are inherent in the natural world, inherent to nature? Or are they subjective human constructs of mind that we get to invent and decide upon? And we've gotten upwards of 70% of people. In some areas, 75%, 3 out of 4 human beings. In what I might call slightly better moral areas of the human population, in certain geographical regions.
So he's talking about like the philosophy students and stuff he's bombarding as they're coming out of universities. Like, yeah, and younger people are going to have a better grasp on what you're talking about.
The lowest percentage that we've gotten in these social experiments is 2/3, 2 out of 3. Never even once in all the social experiments that we've done over the years gotten even a 50-50 breakdown. Minimum 2 out of 3 people are moral relativists. The highest that we've gotten in any one given geographic area is 3 out of 4, so over 75, slightly over 75%. Imagine that.
What do we interview? Like 10 people today? 75%.
This is where we're at in human consciousness, and it's rapidly growing worse, not better.
This is where we're...
Until we do something about it, it will continue to get worse.
It's so grandiose.
So that's the second tenet of Satanism, moral relativism.
He's like, I've done some surveys, some independent surveys, and my studies have found... Give me some numbers, bro. Give me some real numbers. Don't tell me 2/3 of all the people you talk to. Like, what is that? It's the easiest way to know somebody. You know what? 2/3 of everybody I surveyed, not going to give you the number of actual people surveyed, that would be legit.
The belief that there's no objective right or wrong, they're constructs of the mind, and we can make them up and say whatever they are. This leads to the third tenet, which is social Darwinism. And again, these are loosely defined tenets. You're not going to find one book or document that just says this is exactly what they are. From me being in the religion for many years, I garnered this through speaking with people, through also reading texts and seeing what people who espouse the satanic ideology say. This has to be understood. This is a condensing of many years of research, and not only research, but personal lived life experience on my part, being around these people and having very in-depth discussions with them on many occasions.
Who?
Social Darwinism is the third tenet.
Social Darwinism?
This is the extension of the theory of Darwinian macrobiological evolution into the human domain, into human society. So you're bringing animal behavior and theories regarding it into the human realm, which is a big, slippery slope, if you properly understand it.
Not entirely wrong. He's got his own definition going in here. Opponents of Darwinian macrobiological evolution postulate the notion of survival of the fittest animals, meaning that animals who are the most dominant will rule their social strata. Applied to the human domain, this theory puts forward the notions that 1, it is the natural order and even desirable for human society to be ruled by the most dominating and vicious humans, and 2, that such humans' genes are the reasons they acquired and maintain their positions of power. Would you agree or disagree that the vast majority of individuals in our society subscribe to such an ideology? I would strongly disagree, and I'm going to show you something here. We over here at Stupid Monkey Philosophy like to fact check with Google search sometimes. Yeah, I don't give a shit. It's fine. Let's see, this is from Oxford Languages again. I kind of tend to trust them. The theory that individuals, groups, and peoples are subject to the same Darwinian laws of natural selection as plants and animals, now largely discredited, social Darwinism was advocated by Herbert Spencer and others in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and was used to justify political conservatism, imperialism, and racism, and to discourage intervention and reform. Social Darwinism refers to various theories and societal practices that purport to apply biological concepts of natural selection and survival of the fittest to sociology, economics, and politics, and which were largely defined by scholars in Western Europe and North America in the 1870s. Right? Nobody subscribes to social Darwinism anymore. You're the only one who's worried about it. Oh, I have to reshare the screen. I'm getting carried away over here. I don't want to use up too many hours on this guy. He's a little emotional, All right, we'll see what his next slide is here.
Postulate the notion of survival that beings for human society to. So would you agree or disagree that the vast majority of human beings in our society subscribe to such an ideology? That they're perfectly fine with there being this hierarchical construct of rulers over other human beings.
That's not what
that make
means.
The decisions for many other people. And they believe it's just fine, and it is actually the natural order.
No. Democracy is not social Darwinism. That's not the same thing.
For a small group of control freak human beings to really seize and maintain power over other people, and perfectly okay with the contrary. And it is basically saying these human beings can get to dictate, that's called making a law, over how all of the rest of human beings are going to live, because they consider that they know better, that they're just, better fit to rule, better fit to make those decisions for others, and then other people must obey their dictates. And that's just a form of slavery through violence and coercion that we euphemize with the word government. And that's what that all comes out of, the belief in social Darwinism. If people did not believe in social Darwinism, they would never put up with the slavery called government.
Okay.
And that is how this satanic mindset gets into the minds of the average person and just rules over their entire mentality and ultimately their spirit. The fourth and final tenet is one of the big ideologies of Satanism is directing the other four elements, and the top point of the star would be the fifth element of spirit. Satanism again seeks to invert everything. So they're trying to destroy the spirit. They're trying to destroy spirituality and keep it suppressed by these other tenets of pure selfishness, egotism, and materiality. So selfishness and egotism is one of the 4 points of the pentagram, the inverted pentagram. Moral relativism, social Darwinism, eugenics, and dysgenics, all ultimately designed to destroy human spirituality, to destroy the human spirit so that people can be ruled and kept slaves in our world. And that is exactly what...
That's just so bad. So you've assigned each point of the pentagram that's actually a pentacle, I think. Oh, what? The pentagram was common. The pentagram was commonly seen as a symbol for good and for protection against evil. It stood for the 5 wounds that Jesus Christ received during crucifixion: nails in each hand and foot, and a spear wound in his side. Or they could be earth, sky, fire, water, wind. Satanism. Oh, that's not Satanism. How the hell did I type that word? Satanism. Yeah, there's actually no and the pentacle in Wicca represents the 5 elements. Yeah, there's no one says anything like that. You just made that all up. Mark's just making shit up, man. It's like he made up being a satanic priest and all this shit. Liar.
What the human condition is: covert slavery. And it is all done through the destruction of human spirituality through the other tenets of Satanism, and getting people to do it to themselves by subscribing to this belief system, which they are ultimately inculcated into from the moment they're born. And a lot of people wrongly insist that if you're nice, you can't be a Satanist. And I just want to emphatically state, niceness has nothing to do with this, folks. You can be a nice person, or put on the air that you're a nice person, and absolutely be a Satanist in your mind and in your deeds. Niceness is not the determining factor regarding whether a person embodies the mindset of Satanism in their lives. So nice people can be de facto Satanists. And as a matter of fact, Most people in our society who are perfectly nice to the average human being that comes into contact with them on a daily basis, inside their mentation, in their psychology, and in their behavior, they are de facto Satanists, just wearing a mask of niceness. And if you peel away those layers of the onion, if you peel all those masks away, you're going to find a Satanist underneath. And this is most people. This is the average person. Okay? We're not talking about a small minority of people. The active Satanists properly understand objective morality and natural law and willfully choose right behavior over wrong behavior. Most people don't even understand what right behavior is versus wrong behavior. That's why they advocate for so much immoral, wrong behavior in the world. De facto Satanists seem like quote-unquote nice people and still completely espouse and embody the satanic mindset regarding what they believe and how they live in the world through their actions, through their deeds. This is a very important distinction to make, a very important concept to understand, and it's a difficult pill for many people to swallow. Yet it is true, nonetheless, whether you are triggered by this or not. This is exactly what is going on in our world. This is exactly what de facto Satanism is and is about.
He's going to continue to repeat himself.
Treat other people nicely in your day-to-day interactions with them. It's all about what you believe and ultimately what behaviors you yourself are either conducting. Way. How many people would you honestly estimate are in this me mindset all day, every day?
You've already asked this question earlier in your presentation.
And if you're honest, sensate pleasure and comfort as possible in life. That describes almost everyone, with a relative few exceptions. They live in a state of conditioned response, desiring only immediate sensate pleasure to suffer and to understand, especially in light of how the dark occult interact among themselves and raise their own children, who are going to be the future, groomed to be the future rulers of the world. The inability to delay personal sensate gratification until a later time is one of humanity's primary weaknesses, and that's one of the dark occult's primary strengths.
That's just human psychology. There's nothing to do with dark occult. It has nothing to do with anything you're talking about. I mean, clever, not really. I mean, the whole biblical narrative is based on the idea of temptation and resistance and, all that good shit. Self-restraint, temperance, Yeah, you just discovered Latin and hyphenated it, and you think you've made up a new concept? But you haven't. You haven't invented a new concept. There's nothing new about what you're talking about. You're just talking about people behaving immorally and in a way that is not disciplined. Like, nothing about that says Satanism. I'm sorry. I don't think I could stand any more of this. He's very redundant. We'll skip up to an hour, see if the presentation changes at all. But I think I'm going to end it at an hour too, so we got a few more minutes.
Laws and different state boundaries at different times and at different places is all moral relativism. And again, the satanic mindset thinks that that's fine. It doesn't see the inherent moral contradiction in that. It doesn't see the moral illegitimacy of man's law. It perfectly accepts that, and it's perfectly reasonable to it because, again, it's only moral.
I do want to go back because this was kind of interesting. State marijuana laws. Mark is against marijuana.
And then the law changes, and then you could do the exact same behavior at another time and it'd be perfectly seen as okay or moral. This is absolute nonsense. It's absolute garbage. Anybody that thinks that way cannot exercise true logic, true reason, true morality. And they are moral relativists. I'll give an example in a moment. But they are perfectly comfortable with the idea of what's right for me is right, what's wrong for me is wrong. At any given time or place, that can change. That's why it's moral relativism. Such morally relativistic thinking is what truly defines the mindset of a de facto Satanist. It's one of the biggest defining psychological characteristics of a de facto Satanist.
No.
And again, we could just look at an example of any type of laws. You could look at gun carry laws. You could look at...
we could look at any type of laws, but you're going to look at marijuana law by state.
Committing of certain behaviors. And you could look at, again, prohibition in certain states versus certain states saying it's perfectly okay for to use what they call marijuana, which should be properly called cannabis, in a medical capacity or even in a recreational capacity. So the blue states have recreational usage of cannabis. The green states have medically prescribed uses of cannabis. And
you realize that marijuana and cannabis mean the same thing. They're just different etymologies.
Gray states in this graph are still saying that cannabis is going to be tightly controlled, and if you use it or distribute it there, you can be caged. You can be thrown in a cage, and your freedom can be taken from you. So the question is, who's right? Which of these states are correct? Which of these states are incorrect? Is it a right to imbibe a substance into one's own body because you own your body? Of course it is. Anybody who's making any restriction on that is committing a wrongdoing by preventing the exercise of a right to decide what you place into your own body. Separate that if you act irresponsibly after imbibing any substance, whether it be cannabis, alcohol, or bleach, you're going to go
cannabis, alcohol, or bleach. Why are you dividing the United States, Mark? Why don't you look at cannabis or marijuana laws worldwide? In some countries you can be executed. In some countries you can smoke it right in front of the cops, on the streets. And we still technically aren't supposed to do that in the U.S., but some people do.
You're going to go and do to another person is completely separate from the first behavior of imbibing a substance or a compound. That's nobody's business of what you put into your body. It's secondary in another decision and another behavior if you go out and harm somebody else, and you don't have the right to initiate harm.
But the ironic thing about that, Mark, who initiated prohibition? It was the Christians. The Christian fundamentalists were the ones who pushed for prohibition on alcohol, right? And we know how that went. Right? But it was it was the opposite of the Satanists. I guess you would say they were de facto Satanists too, huh?
So again, making up laws in different state boundaries at different times and at different places is all moral relativism. And again, the satanic mindset thinks that that's fine. It doesn't see the inherent moral contradiction in that. So it doesn't see the moral illegitimacy of man's
law. The government is Satan. Right. Yep. That's all she wrote, folks. Well, I think Mark believes what he's saying. Doesn't mean he's not a grifter, and doesn't mean he's not lying about being a former priest in the satanic in the Church of Satan, right? So again, very specific claims you'd have to qualify. You'd think if someone was exposing a cult, as he claims to be doing, he wouldn't just be talking about hours and hours of this redundant garble about making you understand a satanic mindset, and then using other words to tell you that basically anything can be Satanism. Of course, he's not going to tell you what's not Satanism, right? But okay, that's fine. But you would think if you were exposing a cult, usually when people expose cults, they expose the leadership. If they can, you'll have names. You say, you wouldn't say, I've had many different conversations. Like, you would cite some actual, dates, times, places, and people. You have some type of corroborating source. You can just have the Church of Satan say, this guy's just a lunatic and we don't know anything about him, and then he, has no response to that, apparently. I'd like to see if he does, actually. Last time we searched this, let's see, I just looked at the very top response, which is still there, missing from archives. And here's a Twitter post. Let's look at the Twitter post from Church of Satan here. And we'll follow Church of Satan. Oh, come on. If only there was an official verified source with a fact consulted. Tweet is from a suspended account. I don't know who that was. Okay. It's also not one of the tenets of Satanism. Mark Passio is a former member of the Church of Satan and is distorting their philosophy. LaVey's Satanic Bible is my source. Oh, okay. So he's referencing the website that we were already looking at. That what okay, nothing interesting there. And then there's a Reddit thread. Yeah, the stuff about Satanism doesn't track. He claims to have been a high priest. A lot of ex-Satanists claim that. Are you still seeing this? Or no? Yes. What are your thoughts? Watch some of this stuff. The stuff about Satanism doesn't track. He claims to have been a high priest of the Church of Satan. A lot of ex-Satanists claim that, but it's a laughable claim for anyone who spent 5 minutes researching the COS. I don't think his understanding of Satanism in general is accurate, but I don't recall the specifics. Something about it having 4 pillars, which isn't a thing. Yeah, he claimed to be a high priest in COS, but talked about how much they all believe in demons for real and summon them, yada, yada, yada. None of these fakers ever do any research. It's hilarious. Theistic Satanism is out there. I'm one myself, but they never ever claim to be us for some reason. Okay. Not the most intellectually. Not true. He said he was a beginner. Everything you say in your comment is incorrect, but that's okay. No, he does claim that he was a priest. I don't know. He might have just been admitted to the clergy or whatever, according to his story, but he does claim to have been a priest. That's what he said. You were wrong, Budapest. He's shown pictures and his certificate of becoming a priest. You guys should do more research. All right. Well, I haven't seen those. I'd check it out. But what? Oh, that's not it. Okay. Lunatic. Yeah. Deleted. I think he's a little nutty. No, I'm not doing that. Why do I need to do that? Literally displayed a COS member card, but he could fake that. He could make those. Like the things he's saying have nothing to do with the actual tenets of Satanism, and he's not. Like I said, you would think if he had information, he would call out specific members. He would call out high-ranking members. He would name people. He doesn't do that. So if he was involved in the church, it doesn't seem like he was so involved in the church to have the intimate, detailed knowledge that he claims to have of the true intents of the church and all of that stuff, right? Some surface understanding, maybe it is the case that they used him in some way, and so he's just he's pissed off. Maybe somebody in the church got one over on him. I don't know. It does have something in there in the commandments I read about. If people are annoying you in your home, basically to fuck with them to your heart's content. So maybe that could translate to the church for some people or something. They're like, I don't like this guy. Because people do that in Christian churches too. Right? People do that everywhere you go. There's dicks everywhere you go. And then there's nice peoples, and then there's all the in-betweens. Can't all be nice peoples all the time. All right. Wrap it up. Trusty ape, stupid monkey. Coming back next time with no more of this. Moral realism. We'll do moral realism. Go back into some old school philosophy. I'll read some Nietzsche. And what was the other thing? Darn it. Trusty Ape Podcast. Working some stuff out in the wash right now. So hopefully that'll be coming shortly. All right. We'll see you next time.